Today I'll share with you my top 10 tips for new players in Civilization, Eras, and Allies. And although I'm not, a master of the game yet, I've been having a really great Season 1, and a part of how I've been showing that is I'm currently ranked number 3 for growth. I mean, I'm not in the top of the PvP leaderboard, but hey, I'm on the board, all right? So let's talk about how you grow fast, all right? Tips and tricks to grow fast. And I've got a few combat tips, so I'll weave them in, all right? We'll do the best we can here. Big thank you again to the makers of Civilization, Eras, and Allies for sponsoring this video. You can use the link in the description to download the game if you haven't already. Now look, in this video, there's a bunch of standard stuff in this genre that we could go talk about, like join a great alliance. And like very, 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 very obviously, being in a great alliance is going to be a multiplier for your success. I happen to be very fortunate in joining in Season 1 with a group that is incredibly powerful, all right? And that is KSR. They've been really awesome, and I've learned a lot from them. But this is like far and away the most important thing you could go and do. This video, however, is not going to be these like generic tips and tricks. It's going to be things specific to Civilization, Eras, and Allies. I'm going to assume you know this kind of generic stuff, but if you didn't, go join the best alliance you possibly can. Okay, so now to the good stuff, all right? Tip number 1 is going to be prioritizing ruins and monuments and libraries, all right? So at the start of a season, the fastest way to boost your progress from one era to another is going to be to boost your insight yield, all right? Insight is basically like speed ups from other games. One insight is basically like a minute of speed up towards research. So to do this, you're going to want to get as many ruin styles as you possibly can, as high level as possible, and as quickly as possible. Now, ruins tiles, as it turns out, serve a double purpose. Okay, so a ruins tile will, I have the max number of ruins, but meant to tap over here. Ruins tiles serve a dual purpose, as I was mentioning. Not only are they giving you insight, which you can see on the left over there, but also you can drill on them. And when you drill on a ruins tile, you get more experience. So although it's harder to do, once you're able to actually do that successfully, it's absolutely worth drilling on ruins wherever possible. All right. And as we've also explained in my other videos, it's worth potentially picking up the Korea Civilization. That will accelerate your insight. I've actually switched back to the Korea Civilization in the end here of our season. That's topic perhaps for a separate video. But the Korea Civilization has a couple really cool perks. I've mentioned those in the past as one of the best starting civilizations, but you get tech research speed, and you also get, from your capital, tech buildings yielding 10% more insight, all right? Now, I did mention monuments and libraries, so if we go back to my city, all right, we get a look in here in my city center, you can see two important things. The monument has got an insight yield. In addition, the library is influencing the number of ruins you can capture. So pushing on all of these things to push your insight is massive, right? The path to dominance starts with research. Knowledge is power, baby. All right, on the topic of knowledge is power, let's talk about edicts. Edicts are incredibly powerful, all right? This is compared together with the first tip. This is tip number 2. You always want to be harvesting your insight for faster progress in your technology. Edicts can be used for so many things, but using them for insight is your priority above everything else. Don't waste your edicts on other things early in the season, because your edict recovery speed is going to be very, very low. Even in the mid to late game, harvesting insight every day can speed up your silver smelting tech much faster. We talked about silver smelting in my Wonders video, and depending on how long this vid goes, maybe we'll talk more about that as a sort of tip as well. But by doing this, you'll gain more silver, and you can recruit more heroes leading up to your next season, which you'll use as fodder. And you can also steadily boost your technology rankings to earn more rewards at the end of the season. So edicts are really powerful, and in case you haven't ever harvested off a tile before, this is new to you, you can see the harvest button over there. If I tap harvest, it's going to tell you what it's going to do. I'm telling you that the thing you should harvest from is in fact your ruins tiles. So if we go to the ruins tiles here, we'll just pick one. You'd want to go to the highest level one, but you can see when I harvest here, insight, baby. Knowledge. Literally harvesting knowledge. All right. Next up, I want to talk about how you supercharge your ruins output, tip number 3, and your edict recovery speed using diplomacy. Diplomacy, obviously very valuable. In this game, diplomacy comes in the form of chatting with the neighboring city-states and getting some buffs. And the buff that you want for tech is going to be ruins output. This increases the output of your ruin, every single one of them, by 2. So if you have 15 ruins and you increase the ruin output by 2, okay, that's 30 extra insight from that per time. But you can get that buff 4 times. And this all stacks up, which is pretty nice. So this is 8 increased ruin output. Each ruin has 8 more insight that it's producing. Pretty cool, right? But we're not done there. That is hourly improvement, all right? Hourly improvement. In addition, if we make our way over to trade, you can also get edict recovery speed. You see where this is going? So you got to get ruins and push on those. And then, right, you're going to use edicts to harvest from them. And then you're going to go and increase your edict recovery speed, all right, so that you can do it more often, right? Knowledge is power, baby. Tip number 4, all right? Make sure your tech research meets their Eureka requirement. So there's a really cool mechanic in this game, and it's called a Eureka. And a Eureka is basically an insight toward completing research, all right? And you have to have your Eureka before you start the research, and it'll give you 30% completion toward the research. We covered this a little bit in my Wonder video the other day, so I don't want to go too in-depth here, but technology can also have a Eureka requirement. If you complete that requirement, then you get the 30% boost toward completing the research before you've even started it. All right. And you really want to do this like before you start your research. Get the Eureka requirement, then start the research. Now, on to tip number 5. It's all going so fast, chat. Let's talk about drilling. So drilling is another option here. It needs to be conducted within 15 tiles of your city. The game reminding me, hey, noob. You basically do this on a tile to fight the guardians that are there and get experience, even though you already own the tile. So it's like a practice fight. And one thing you can do is you can supercharge how fast you do your drills. Now, this might sound weird, but if you've got 10 army queues and, you know, a boatload of AP to burn through on every single one of these armies, you can actually do this 3 times as fast. I'll put some video up on screen of this technique. But the main motivation for this technique is that, you know, let's say you have only like 1 high-level ruins in an area, all right? You're going to be spending a lot of time at that one ruins if you have to wait and do each army one at a time. It's not that using this technique I'm going to share with you actually gets it done any faster. You're literally just doing 3 armies at the same time. And again, this might sound simple, but when you have 10 armies, they all have 150 AP. Each one only uses, 15 AP every time they drill. And you need to drill all of them. You're going to be thanking me for this tip, all right? So this only really works best if all the marches are the same hero level, so you can drill on the same tile. And consider keeping tiles between like 4 to 9 for drilling to make sure your armies can win without losing militia. So although it might seem like counterintuitive to hold on to some of the lower level tiles, there definitely can be use for that, all right? So the technique here is to basically send a second and third drilling army immediately after your first in order to drill 2 to 3 armies simultaneously. Tip number 6, this is actually very straightforward, but when your alliance gains access to new zones, there's a ton of cool stuff that's in the zone, man. You really want to be there when that zone opens, okay, so that you can gain access to all the goodies. Now, when I talk about a zone opening, let me give you a really good example here. Let's zoom in on a pass, for example. All right. Major structures like passes or also docks are barriers to new zones. There we go. There's an example of a dock, right? When you pass through these areas, there's typically higher level tiles. There's barb ruins, which are incredibly powerful and let you teleport for free and let you improve a bunch of tiles for free. This is critical to attend, all right? You want to be there when the passes open or the docks open and your group takes these things. Now, you can also help your alliance out by paving. That's the process of capturing and releasing tiles to move toward a strategic destination, like a city-state that you're moving in to capture in a new area, okay? So not only is it good for you, but it's also good for your alliance to be participating in this. And you also can use this march or multiple marches that you attend the opening with to build airports as you progress through each zone to set up some restoration points, either next to city-states or the passes is probably a good place to put those, all right? Now let's talk about harvesting again for a second, because I got a tip for you, all right? We're back on harvesting, is that you actually also get yield, 15% yield from the 6 surrounding tiles. So if you are harvesting in a time of war for resources, one thing you can do is to set up a food tile, if you can find one, with a bunch of other food tiles nearby. That way, when you harvest, you get all food. See where this is going? When you're doing building upgrades, you're going to need a lot of stone. Okay? So if you can find a stone tile surrounded by lots of other stone tiles, that'll be a really good place to harvest because stone is the primary resource for your building upgrades, right? This is going to be a big deal. So I think for both food and stone, as an example, having a spot where all the other nearby spots are kind of the same thing can be super, super valuable. This is kind of a weird spot because I got kind of a blend of both here. And, you know, you're only getting 15% from the neighboring tiles, but, you know, micro optimizations in critical moments can really add up, all right? On the topic of that, let's talk about how you can take more actions, all right? So there are missions that you get, and completing these missions gives a variety of rewards. One of the rewards is a replenishment of AP. So one strategy is to save up AP replenishment missions so that when a war breaks out, you can replenish AP on your most important armies. Now, there's a cap to the number of missions you can have around. It's 15, so you got to kind of play this smart. But stacking AP recovery missions is a very common tactic for accelerating your ability to wage war. Which brings us to tip number 9, cavalry and endurance armies to maximize your triumph during sieges. So triumph is what you'll get as you work into the end game for your end of season reward. You can see your triumph if you go to rankings. We'll go alliance, season. There's my triumph. It's moderate. I mean, maybe it's low. I don't know. I have some triumph, all right? I've been triumphant. But at the end of the season, you get this currency based on your individual contributions. And one way you're going to get triumph is by depleting endurance and slaying guards during sieges on things like city-states. So the faster you can hit the guards, the more damage you can deal, and therefore the more points you can get. Cavalry are much faster than the other unit types, and you can use them to more rapidly hit the guards and score more points. Another thing you can do to score a lot of points is use what I'm calling an endurance army. Endurance armies typically have higher siege stats, and you want to basically have a bunch of heroes that you're using exclusively sort of for this purpose and not for fighting. I talked about endurance armies much more in depth in my Babylon capture video. So I'll have a card in the end screen for that one. You can see all the details about an endurance army. All right. And lastly, this tip is going to sound a little crazy, but I'm going to show some footage on screen here of what I'm jokingly calling speed hacking. All right. But the way this basically works is that when you go to travel, you can see how long it would take you. And if it's 12 seconds per tile, okay, you can count up the number of tiles and you can figure out how long it's going to take you. But there's a neat little trick, which is that if you're already halfway toward your destination, you can drag and drop one tile at a time, and it will only add 12 seconds to the time. In other words, you basically get half of the time cut off of your tile walking. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, you're going to go one tile at a time. It should be 12 seconds per tile, but after 6 seconds have elapsed, it drops the remaining 6 seconds when you target a new tile, and it starts a new 12-second timer. Now, if you're slow, or you do this too soon, and you have more than half the time remaining in your walk, then it starts the timer over again, the 12 seconds restart. So if it would be 12 seconds per tile, and if at the 7-second mark I retarget, now it's going to take me 24 seconds. I go super slow to the next tile. So you need to understand the way this march mechanic works. And like, yeah, no, it's like kind of speed hacking. It's kind of it's kind of crazy. All right. Hopefully you enjoyed the vid. If you did, throw a like on here, subscribe to the channel. Big thank you again to our sponsor, Civilization, Eras, and Allies. I'll be dropping some bonus tips and some YouTube shorts soon, so consider subscribing if you haven't already. And check out the card in the end screen for the Endurance Army video that I promised you. This one's already kind of long enough, all right? Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.